What kind of waitress shows up with a broken hand so clumsy? Someone sneered, and the table burst into that mean kind of laughter that pretends to be playful, but cuts anyway. And I remember thinking, you know what I mean. You hear it and you know a line just got crossed even if nobody will admit it. So I sat there in the corner with my water and my quiet name tag, and watched the young woman set a heavy tray down with the kind of care you use when pain is real and you have no room for mistakes. And I thought, let me back up a sec. This is how a room tells you who it is. Her name was Olivia, slender, hair pulled tight. Plain black uniform that made her look like every waitress you never remember, except for the bandage wrapping her hand, not the loose kind you wear for sympathy. The tight, purposeful kind that keeps a busted grip alive for one more double shift. Chandeliers throwing soft light across polished wood. Tables stacked with people who pay more for a bottle of wine than a lot of folks pay for rent, and all they saw was a bandage, not the steady breathing. Not the way she kept her shoulders square so the weight stayed close, just the bandage. She moved on, and then a table of glossy hair influencers giggled about her bandage being tragic, and I wrote a single word on a napkin, not clumsy, because the tray never shook. The plates landed with surgeon precision, and yes, I chose that word on purpose. If you're wondering why I was in the corner with a water I didn't touch, yeah, that happened on purpose too. I own the place, but sometimes you learn more with a quiet shirt and no entourage than with a clipboard and a speech. The manager, Carl, was barking that performance bully tone he'd learned from 1,000 reality shows, the staff cutting corners to survive him, and I'd been here all week, listening, factoring, trying to see the bones of the place I supposedly knew. And then there was her, moving like someone who'd been trained to stay calm, while everything around her wasn't. At one point a loud guy, wine flushed and proud of it, knocked his own glass across her apron and the table howled. He threw a crumpled tip at the floor like he was tossing scraps to a dog. And she stared at him so level it made the whole table flinch, then said, "Keep it," simple as a scalpel, and walked away, and I felt something old and familiar stir. Because I'd seen that posture before, not in service work, in rooms where outcomes get carved into you, in training halls where hands learn muscle memory that doesn't shake. Then the night tilted. A stack of plates crashed by the kitchen, the room jumped like prey, and a group of over-moneyed boys staged their little rebellion in the corner, bottle smashed, glass skittering. One of them shoved her like he was testing a rumor, and she dropped, bandaged hand scraping tile. The sound like a wince you can hear, and then she rose, fast and exact, turned the big one, bent his arm behind him, and put him on a table without breaking a plate. That clean, that practiced, and she whispered, "Don't." Not dramatic, not a threat, just instruction. Commendation, discharged 2 years ago because the body has limits even courage can't outrun, and she'd been offered a path she had to turn down because of the injury. And it hit me how obscene it was that a room full of our city's elite had bent itself into pretzels to ignore that kind of truth, just so they could feel taller for 5 minutes. You know what I mean. That flavor of arrogance that makes decent people small, if you let it. That night we had a corporate gala, suits and speeches and performative generosity. Olivia showed up anyway because rent doesn't care about your dignity. Another server accidentally hip-checked her so a glass went skidding. The snickers started again like a dirty old song. A gray-haired donor stood and called her trash, said it plain. And when I tell you the air went brittle you'll think I'm exaggerating. But I promise you, the room crackled, so I stood. Slid off the fake name tag I'd been wearing all week, and let my voice cut clean. I'm Ethan Caldwell. I own this place. Silence is loud when people realize the camera's back on them. Carl paled. The gray-haired man sat like someone had turned gravity up. I pulled out the envelope and opened it under that chandelier glow. A small metal hit the linen with a sound so light it may as well have been thunder, and I told them what it meant, where she'd been when it was earned, what her hands had done when it hurt to even close them. Then I turned to Carl and told him to clear his desk, No speeches, no severance, just the door, and I said to the room that we serve food here. But we do not serve humiliation, and I meant every word. The internet did what the internet does. A guest had filmed the insult and the reveal. By morning, Carl was gone from our website and halfway to the part of town where resumes go to get rewritten. The hedge fund heckler got roasted harder than the duck confit he'd bragged about. The slick-haired server lost a sponsorship for laughing in the background, and the Diamonds at Dinner crowd went suddenly quiet when they realized shame doesn't care about credit limits. And through it all, Olivia kept showing up in that same plain uniform like a lighthouse, not a victory lap. Just work done well. A regular with soft eyes and a card in her hand waited for a quiet moment and told Olivia her son had served and didn't come home. She said thank you with a tremor that made the room feel honest for once, and Olivia said she was sorry and meant it, tucked the card next to whatever photo she carried, and went back to her station with steps a shade lighter. And if you're human, that image stays with you. The tiny transfer of weight when someone decides they're seen. A week later, a new kid on the floor asked if he could pick her brain about being a medic because his brother was training. And Olivia actually set the rag down. First time I'd seen her stop mid-task, and gave him 5 minutes that straightened his spine. And I watched from the bar thinking leadership doesn't always come with a title. Sometimes it's a hand that hurts and still helps. Sometimes it's the way you thread a dining room without clipping a single chair even when people are trying to make you stumble. And because stories like symmetry. A car pulled up one evening and a man stepped out with the quiet presence of someone who's built for weather, suit simple, shoulders unbothered. He walked in, found her, asked you ready, not an order. A question with a history in it, and she grabbed her bag, and the room held its breath as they left together. Not dramatic, no orchestral swell. Just a door opening and two people who know what doors cost. And the gray-haired man who'd called her trash found something urgent to study on his plate. And even the red-lipped server lost her line mid-sentence. Here's the thing. Rooms judge before they know. They inventory your clothes and your scars and the way you stand. Then they decide your worth like they were placed in charge by some invisible committee. And sometimes you need a moment where a metal hits linen to reset the scale. But the part one keep thinking about is how often medals hang in drawers while people carry on anyway. Because rent is due and pride is expensive, and who you are is what you do when nobody claps. If you were waiting for a neat bow, she stayed, she left. Here's what happened next. I'm going to leave you a frame instead. She worked a few more weeks on her terms while we rebuilt our standards from the inside out. And then one day she didn't clock in. No note. No drama, just an empty hook where her apron usually hung, and I like to think she chose herself in a way the room had not chosen her. Maybe she took that steady hand and found work that fitted. Maybe she went home with a man whose presence moved the air. Maybe she finally scheduled the surgery she'd put off too long. Or maybe she just stood by the river for an hour and let the city take her noise so she could hear her own breath again. Yeah, that happened. And it left a mark on this place, on me. On the staff who learned that courtesy isn't optional and dignity is not a luxury side dish. And if you've ever been read wrong at first glance. If you've carried a weight you didn't advertise because survival requires quiet, then you already know the point. And if you've ever been the one laughing at the wrong time. Maybe tonight you set that habit down and tip a little heavier and say thank you like a full sentence. I'll end here with something simple and a little dangerous, because it asks for honesty. Tell me where you land on this. Was the call out in the dining room the right move, or should I have handled it off the floor? What matters more, protecting someone's dignity in private or changing the room by example in public? And what would justice look like if you were at that table? Share your take below. Don't hold back. Let's talk about right and wrong, and how community can either wound or protect, because in rooms like this one, the story is never finished. It only pauses long enough to ask what kind of person you plan to be next time the laughter starts.